All hell is breaking loose throughout the entire world as Donald Trump's attack on everyone is backfiring in his face. You have the premier of Greenland rebuking Donald Trump in public, saying, "Don't you dare say you're bringing hospital ships to save our people. We don't need to be saved from you." In fact, Greenland saved a soldier who was in a United States nuclear submarine that was suspiciously cruising around Greenland at the same time Denmark's king was visiting. And Greenland's premier said, "Get those boats the hell away from us and don't even think about bringing these boats around us." Lots of people in Greenland think that Donald Trump's claim that he's going to be bringing hospital ships to Greenland is like a Trojan horse for an invasion. And then there was a nuclear submarine off the coast of Greenland that they found out after some American soldier got very sick and almost died in the submarine, so it had to surface and the Greenlandic people saved the individual. I'll go through that in a moment. Also, you have the European Union Parliament saying, "We're not going through with any trade deal with the United States right now after you just imposed another 15% tariff against the rest of the world under Section 122 of the United States Trade Act of 1974. Screw that. The United States Supreme Court struck down your unlawful tariffs against the world, and now you're doing this. We can't do any deals with you. Get the hell out of here." India's trade representatives also, they canceled their trip that they were supposed to take to the United States. Also, you have Donald Trump's influencers out there saying, "Hey, guess what we did? The United States was responsible for killing El Mencho, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. The United States, we did it in Mexico." And then Mexico had to respond and said, "Actually, we did it. Sure, there was bilateral communications with the United States, but Mexico says we did it in any event." Hell is breaking loose in Mexico right now, in Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta, where the cartels are going to war right now in Mexico. And guess where the United States troops are after Donald Trump previously threatened to invade Mexico over cartels? Trump has his troops, about 50% of American forces right now are right around Iran as Donald Trump is threatening war with Iran. You also have the French embassy summoning Charles Kushner, who's the United States ambassador to France, after the United States embassy in France put out a statement saying it is our expectation that France will follow our mandates and crack down on leftist extremist groups. There was a murder of a far right-wing person there during a protest in France. And so this was how the United States responded, trying to interfere with French domestic politics, to which in France, their government responded, "We don't need you to tell us how we handle domestic politics. That's entirely inappropriate. Let's summon the felon," right? Charles Kushner, Jared Kushner's dad, is the ambassador to France. He is a felon who was pardoned by Donald Trump in 2020. He was involved in a massive tax evasion scheme. And then his brother-in-law, his wife's brother, was cooperating with the feds against him. Actually, it was Chris Christie when he was the New Jersey federal prosecutor at the time. And when his brother-in-law was cooperating with the New Jersey feds, then Kushner, Charles Kushner, secretly hired prostitutes to try to set up his brother-in-law and then to blackmail the brother-in-law for cooperating with the feds. And then Charles Kushner had to then plead guilty to witness tampering as well. And by the way, you see why I call this video "All Hell is Breaking Loose." And then you have the United States threatening Europe. The Pentagon is threatening Europe for putting in their European defense a statement that Europe now wants to buy European weapons first. You know how America has a lot of America first weapon systems and America first military procurement? Well, now the latest European Union military procurement directive for the very first time is saying Europe will buy Europe first. And especially after you have the United States making statements, Washington does not need vassals. We want strong partners. Stop being dependent on the U.S. Get the hell out of here, right? That's what Rubio and J.D. Vance were saying. And so Europe's like, okay, we get it. And you're also talking about putting kill switches into your military equipment like F-35. So yeah, we're going to buy Europe first. And then the United States ambassador to the EU then threatened the European Union and said, that's unacceptable. You must buy American weapons first. And Europe's like, you're threatening to invade European Union countries. You're threatening our sovereignty. You're talking about kill switches. You've engaged in a trade war against us. And then you go to these international conferences and demean us and say, we shouldn't be dependent on the US. Okay, we're doing Europe first. To which the US is like, oh, no, we didn't mean that. Our defense industry needs you to buy our weapons. Do you see what's going on here? How weak and pathetic does the United States look? And then you have the United States on the eve of a war with Iran, which I believe is also a wag the dog type moment for the Trump regime to cover up the fact that they're covering up a child sex trafficking ring and the Epstein files and everything we know there. And then you have Steve Witkoff giving an interview over this weekend saying, I'm just surprised that the Iranian Ayatollah has not capitulated yet with all of our military weapons off the coast of Iran with all of our ships, and we have 2 aircraft carriers. Why haven't they given up? Well, they're called hardliners for a reason, number one. And number two, maybe they realize how weak you are and that they think that at the end of the day, you're not going to go to a full-fledged war against them. You just want to do a strike, declare total obliteration like you did last time, which is actually not the case, and then move on. You know how unpopular Donald Trump is? Now you do the most unpopular thing and you start a war in Iran, costing America thousands of lives and treasury. Yeah, we will see impeachments and getting Trump the hell out of there soon if he goes to war with Iran. And Iran realizes that. He realizes that Donald Trump at his core is a weak and pathetic and broken individual, and that Trump just wants a quick strike, so he can say, look what I did, everybody. There's no plan. I mean, if you're looking at Hegseth and Kash Patel and Trump and Noam and this whole entire despicable, weak regime, what you think Iran is actually afraid? They're afraid of our weapons, but the people who hold those weapons right now are fairly weak and pathetic, and so they can't bluff their way out of this one right here. Look, I think the Ayatollah is not legitimate. I hate what the Iranian Ayatollah is doing. I stand strongly and proudly with the people of Iran who want democracy, but Donald Trump betrayed them. Remember when he said, go out on the street, protest against the Ayatollah. If the Ayatollah kills one of you, I've got your back. Now in some statements, Donald Trump claims that the Ayatollah massacred as many as 32,000. That's a number that comes from Trump and the White House. We knew it was in the thousands, potentially tens of thousands, but Trump directly caused the massacre of 30,000+ Iranians who he told to protest and said he got their back, and they started protesting and the Ayatollah started massacring, and Donald Trump didn't even have our military position to help the protesters because our military was off the coast of Venezuela, where we invaded, and then Donald Trump stole the oil money there and put it in a Qatari bank account where he's using it for himself, not controlled by the Treasury. Trump controls a Qatari bank account where he sells oil from Venezuela to his right-wing oligarch buds. They take the oil, they buy the oil, and then Donald Trump takes the money and he puts it in his Qatari bank account. And by the way, they're like, the Trump regime brags, look at all this money we've got. I mean, you've slowed down oil production in Venezuela, by the way, so Trump can do the sales himself and take the oil and then put it in this Qatari bank account. At the same time, while all of this is going on, Donald Trump holds some bizarro board of peace meeting thing where none of our former allies actually attend this thing, and it's all of these different authoritarian regimes there. Then Donald Trump says he's giving $10 billion of our taxpayer money, $10 billion to a Board of Peace bank account. Okay, where's that bank account? Controlled by Donald Trump. In other words, you're stealing another $10 billion of our money for yourself. Oh, and all the while he has a photo of Vladimir Putin in the Oval Office above the photo of his grandkids. Again, how despicable can you get? Let me come and just bring some receipts right here so I could just show you some of these posts, because it is so vital that we focus on this international news because it is getting ignored throughout the world. But as I've said before, if you intend to fight MAGA by just viewing things through a domestic dispute lens, it's like bringing a butter knife to a fight against an F-35. These authoritarian forces are international in scope, and pro-democracy forces need to appreciate that and fight back at an international macro level. We understand that here at the MeidasTouch Network. So let's take a look. You have Jeff Landry, who's Donald Trump's envoy to Greenland. He reposts Donald Trump's post saying, "Working with the fantastic governor of Louisiana, Jeff Landry, we are going to send a great hospital boat to Greenland to take care of the many people who are sick and not being taken care of there. It's on the way, DJT." As this community note says, Greenland provides universal health care. In 2026, Denmark allocated $253 million for further health upgrades. Nuuk and Danish officials deny that there's any health crisis at all. Also, the Mercy and the other hospital ships are currently in maintenance in Alabama, and they cannot be on the way. Just a weird lie. But also, these are the types of lies that Putin talks about with respect to Ukraine. Putin's like, Russia needs to take over this land because Ukraine is not providing the hospitals and healthcare services for his people. That's what these demented authoritarians do. They make up pretexts in order to do invasions. They just need to have a hook. And then once they come up with a BS hook, they just repeat it over and over and over and over and over again. And with the repetition and the big lie, it is a brainwashing strategy that authoritarians use. Throughout history, they've used such a strategy. Then Jeff Landry responds again to the same post. "I want to thank all the doctors, nurses, and medical providers who have reached out, interested in donating medical services for this mission. Once we get everything in place, we would love to welcome all those interested in helping. This is what American First Charity looks like. Thank you, Mr. President." American First Charity, Greenland, Denmark, the EU, they don't want this. They don't need this. And here in America, in Louisiana in particular, but throughout the United States as well, people's health care has been ripped away. People in the United States die in the tens of thousands and millions because healthcare is not a human right in the United States under the Trump regime and under past administrations either who have tried to make it. Healthcare needs to be a human right. We don't have universal healthcare in the United States. We need it. And instead, Donald Trump takes away people's Affordable Care Act subsidies with MAGA sycophants so that people have all gotten kicked off their health care. Then they're kicking people. If you're on Medicaid, you get kicked off too. They timed it so it's after the midterms, but you lose your Medicaid after the midterms. The same way most people have lost their Affordable Care Act plans who can't afford the subsidies.
We're a year into the new administration, and it's getting harder to read the news and see the continued attacks on our First Amendment freedoms daily. Now is the time to look for helpers, those who are strategically fighting day in and day out to preserve our constitutional freedoms. One of the orgs fighting the good fight is Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Their mission is to protect everyone's right to live as they are and believe as they choose, so long as they don't harm others. AU is fighting back against the wave of Christian nationalist threats happening across the country. They filed 11 lawsuits last year alone, multiple against the Trump administration, to protect your individual freedom of and from religion. Whether you support public education, are passionate about LGBTQ+ and reproductive rights, or some combination of all, AU relies on the help of its supporters to do this important work. If you're looking for an organization to support and learn from, head to au.org/Meidas to see how you can get involved in their work and support the fight against Christian nationalism. That's au.org/Meidas.
So here is the statement from the Premier of Greenland, Jens Fredrik Nielsen. This is what he posted on Facebook in response to everything the Trump regime is doing. "It will be a no thank you from here. President Trump's idea of sending an American hospital ship to Greenland has been noted. However, we have a public healthcare system where treatment is free for citizens. That is a deliberate choice and a fundamental part of our society. This is not the case in the United States, where seeing a doctor comes at a cost. We are always open to dialogue and cooperation, including with the United States, but please speak with us instead of making more or less random statements on social media. Thumbs up emoji. Dialogue and cooperation require respect for the fact that the decisions about our country are made here at home. Then it's this photo right here of Jan Fredrik Nielsen, the Premier of Greenland, along with his Minister of Health. You see them right here. To which Jeff Landry, who's the governor of Louisiana, a deranged maniac, this guy, deranged maniac. Why don't you focus on Louisiana being last in basically every ranking when it comes to the welfare and benefit and health and success of states? Why don't you focus on your damn state, you idiot? And here's what Jeff Landry says, though, after seeing that statement from the Premier of Greenland. Shame on Prime Minister Jan Fredrik Nielsen. Donald Trump is trying to help with American care. After speaking to many Greenlanders about the day-to-day problems they face, one issue stood out: healthcare. Many villages and small towns lack basic services that Americans often take for granted. Small settlements are without permanent doctors, diagnostic tools, or specialist care, forcing residents to travel great distances for vital treatments that should be available at home. A healthy Greenland is vital for America's national security. America is committed to defending Greenland, and that begins by ensuring its people are defended against basic illnesses and ailments. These missions matter because health is inseparable from security. America's commitment to defending Greenland must begin with ensuring its people are healthy. Orla Jolson, who does a great job reporting on all things Greenland, says, Greenland's internal affairs and healthcare are for Greenlanders to decide, not the state of Louisiana. And speaking of healthcare, Louisiana consistently ranks among the lowest in the United States for access to care and health outcomes, near the bottom in national health rankings, with limited access to primary care compared to the U.S. average. As noted, the EU Parliament, they're proposing freezing ratification of the trade agreement. India delaying its trade visit with Washington. France summoning Charles Kushner as well. And, lots of Greenlanders, as I said at the outset, view the fact that there was this nuclear submarine off the coast of Greenland. Greenland saved the life of an American military member when that submarine surfaced. And that submarine was circling when the King of Denmark was visiting Greenland. And people believe this could be a Trojan horse as a way to invade. And so they're like, get this, we don't want this hospital ship anywhere near us. Why would we need it at all? You got that sentiment in Greenland. As I noted before, the U.S. ambassador to the EU says that the European preference in its defense procurement directive is unacceptable. It is hindering European rearmament efforts. They must focus on buying from America. Seriously, after all of your attacks on Europe, you're upset that Europe is buying Europe first? That shocks you after all of your attacks? It shocks you that when you have attacked the trade system throughout the world and you've reneged on all America trade deals, that you would have trans-Pacific partnerships with Canada uniting with transatlantic partnerships of Europe, uniting with BRICS bloc nations like Brazil and not Russia, but India and China making deals with Canada and other European countries, and the U.S. is getting cut out. Do we realize how systemic this is? How systemic Donald Trump's damage is? And here's what Donald Trump had to say about Europe, how woke it's become, that Europe is so woke. Anyway, here, play this clip.
Europe has gone woke. Europe is not recognizable when you go into so many places, not all countries. You look at Hungary, you look at Poland, Czech, Slovakia. There are some countries that have gone very much the opposite, some really, and some others. But Europe has to be strong, and they become soft and not recognizable. You go into some of the countries, I don't want to be specific, but I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. And they're not recognizable. They become, the environmentalists have taken over. They've got windmills destroying their fields and their beautiful meadows and their oceans, and they're paying a fortune. Now, Europe has to get smart. Europe's getting killed on two things: energy and immigration.
Now, I do want to mention a few other things because I think this is very important. You also have Don Jr.'s roommate, a guy named Gentry Beach, who is this investor guy, but he's Don Jr.'s roommate, is who he really is. He has cut a deal with a Russian company called Novatech. It was a secret deal forged in the fall of 2025 for Russia to develop natural gas in Alaska. I want you to think about that, put that through your mind, because that's what the Trump regime is focused on right now. As I noted before, the U.S. through its top MAGA influencers like Laura Loomer claim that Trump is doing strikes in Mexico to kill cartel leaders. He had everyone thinking their attention should be in Iran, and boom, he just killed a cartel leader, to which the Embassy of Mexico in the U.S. had to respond. This post is false. The military operation in Jalisco that was aimed at capturing and which killed Mencho was planned and executed by Mexican special forces within the framework of bilateral cooperation with U.S. authorities, providing complementary intelligence. Mexican National Guard are currently reinforcing security in Jalisco and neighboring states in order to maintain order. Here's a scene from Guadalajara International Airport that's under attack. Here's a panoramic view of Puerto Vallarta, right? And, yesterday, and you can see that this is the cartel's retaliation. So it's a total mess. And the U.S. influencers are taking credit for this is a big, big problem. Now, here is Steve Witkoff on Iran saying that we're curious, the president's curious, why hasn't Iran capitulated yet when they see so much military force off their coast? Because they see you as weak, as not having allies, as not having the stomach or strength to do a long-term war. You want to do these little strikes, not little strikes, but, do a short war. Trump spike the football, declare a victory. Iran realizes Trump's pathology, that Trump knows that the U.S. sentiment is against a war. Trump's not even trying to sell the war to the American people the way we've seen in the past when it comes to wars. So Iran, I think, realizes that. They see how unpopular Trump is from covering up the Epstein files. But anyway, here's what Witkoff has to say. Play this clip.
I know that we have red lines here from the U.S. How about over with Iran?
The president asked me that this morning, and I don't want to use the word frustrated. It's almost because he understands he's got plenty of alternatives. But it's curious. He's curious as to why they haven't, I don't want to use the word capitulated, but why they haven't capitulated. Why under this sort of pressure with the amount of sea power, naval power that we have over there, why they haven't come to us and said, we profess that we don't want a weapon, so here's what we're prepared to do. And yet it's hard to sort of get them to that place.
And finally, here's what French President Emmanuel Macron has to say about the Supreme Court. And this is how Europe feels about the United States. So he has to explain to us. Supreme Courts are good. The rule of law is good. Here, play this clip.
It seems quite good to have Supreme Courts, and that's a rule of law. All those who think Supreme Courts are problems in political life, well, a Supreme Court reviewed the Constitution and says it's not conforming to the Constitution. Then everyone says, that's wonderful. Yes, it's good to have checks and balances in democracies. We should certainly welcome that development. All right. Then we must not move too quickly either, because I note that President Trump, just a few hours ago, mentioned he had revived some old texts to implement new tariffs, but these would be more limited in scope and apply to everyone. So we will need to carefully examine this. We will look precisely at all the consequences, what exactly can be done, and then we will adapt accordingly. Ultimately, what is it that we truly desire?
There you have it, everybody. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million. Thanks for watching.
New Meidas merch. Head to store.MeidasTouch.com today and get yourself the best pro-democracy gear and show your support. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.